Hey, I'm Chris Weismann. I'm here with Roberto Weismann at Traction Products, and we're here to show you what we've made for our latest world speed record attempt. A while back, my brother, Pat Weismann, he came up with an idea for a new Streamliner concept, and we worked with a gentleman named Ridge Cook from New Zealand, and we built a car called Wairua 1, and we successfully recorded several speed record attempts, and then we decided we were going to build a new car to try to break 500 miles an hour. Our goal is to be the first piston-powered wheel-driven car to exceed 500 miles per hour. Back in 2018, we helped the Turbinator 2, a turbine-powered car, wheel-driven car, exceed 500 miles an hour. We went 503 miles an hour. And now we're going to try to do it with a piston engine.
Whoa, look at that.
So back in 2018, my brother Pat came up with this idea of a new vehicle with four wheels up front, still a front engine with a transaxle behind it, but this time with four wheels driving the vehicle to try to exceed 500 miles an hour. So this is my realization of my brother's idea. The original concept my brother had was to have actually two engines. One engine in the back, let's say the 2-liter engine, which we already had, and then in the front, a 3-liter engine, which we already had as well. And so you had both engines running into the transmission in the middle, and then after going through the transmission, then you would have drive to the rear wheels this way, and then you would have drives going forward to the front wheels. So the concept my brother had is not a new one, but the way we did it is new, and it's a front wheel drive car basically, where we have the engine way out front, and then we have the transaxle behind it driving the front wheels, and then we have the driver sitting far back behind that. So the overall vehicle from above, the shape of it looks more like a fish. He had started out with a 8-speed transmission that we use called the quick shift, and he wanted to make a 4-wheel drive transaxle out of that. And as we evolved the design, it became a 12-speed transmission. So this is a 12-speed 4-wheel drive transaxle. The other reason why we wanted to have a front-wheel drive vehicle is that we want to be able to pull the Streamliner down the salt instead of trying to push it. Imagine trying to push a pencil on a slippery surface versus pulling a pencil. It's a lot easier to pull it straight than to push a pencil straight. Between the engine and the transaxle is a bell housing. Bell housing has a starter on there, there's the ring gear, and there's also a lockout mechanism that connects the engine to the input shaft. So we could have the engine running without anything spinning in the transmission, or if we want, we could connect the coupler and then we would be spinning the transmission. We're going to push the vehicle to, let's say, maybe 50 miles an hour, and then we are going to select first gear, and then we are going to be able to take off from there. So there's no clutch involved to get the vehicle running.
You already got a gear. 25. Excellent. Excellent.
This car also has the front 4 wheels steering as well. And what's missing on this is the steering mechanism. But basically, sitting off the back of this transmission here would be one steering unit we had, where basically we had a steering shaft that came in here into a bevel gear box, which drove straight down into a rack, which sat back here. And then we have a long tube that goes across the top of the trans all the way through the other side. And then we have another steering box here to drop down to a rack to steer the front wheels. So that's how we took care of the steering, and that all sits below the surface of the transmission, so that the suspension and everything that they mounted to the transmission afterwards was out of the way of the steering. Once you get to about 150 miles an hour, the drag on the vehicle is so high that there's no way you're going to be able to go from, let's say, 8th gear through neutral into 9th gear and get out of the engine, get out of the throttle, I mean, and make the shift. The vehicle will slow down from the drag faster than the engine will slow down to make the next shift. So it really forces us to have full power shifting. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 are all going to be full power shifts. So I decided to make the whole transmission full power shifting. To shift the transmission, we have 18 solenoids. Now it sounds like a lot, and to explain it is that we have 12 speeds, plus we have 6 neutrals. And we want to control those neutrals at certain times. So that makes 18, that's why we've got the 18 valves. We have a shifter, a mechanical shifter that's on the steering wheel that's operated by the thumb of the driver as he goes down the track. So we don't have a computer control on the transmission because we're going to be up in the top of the mountains in Bolivia, and if we have any trouble with the transmission control unit or the engine control unit or anything, we don't want to be chasing electrons on top of some mountain. So we try to make everything as stupid simple as we can. So we just made it all mechanical.
Action. First gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, sixth gear, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, neutral, full neutral in the box, ready to go again.
The other reason why I made it an overriding style transmission was so that in the worst case scenario that the engine seizes while we're going down the run, that we don't lock up the wheels as well. So with the overriding style gearbox, it doesn't matter what gear I'm in. As soon as the engine seizes, then the input speed drops and the transmission just overruns. This is a mechanical shifter for a Streamliner to try to break 500 miles per hour. It's a 12 speed, and we have micro switches on the top here. Each will be connected to a air solenoid that will shift the trans. So the Streamliner will be pushed to about, let's say, 50 miles an hour, and then he'll select first gear. You can see the switch in there, it's in first gear. And then he'll take it out to about 116 miles an hour in a perfect world. Shift into second, take it out to 159, shift into third, take it to 202, shift it into fourth, go to 246, into fifth, go 291, into sixth, go to 342, into seventh, we'll go 395, eighth, 439, ninth, 472, 10th, 504, 11th, 530, 12th, 550. Shift into neutral, shift it back to this position here, and you're ready to go again.
All right, cool.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, go back down. Cut didn't work.
Shift later.
Several years ago, we did a rear end for the Speed Demon. And we basically took that concept and we applied it to this transaxle as well. So you can imagine that that's a speed demon rear end right there, and that's a speed demon rear end right over there. It's a different type of rear end than anything else that's being used out in the salt. We did it specifically for the actual torque reaction of the gear sets within the transaxle to the vehicle. The original concept that my brother had with the two engines was because we wanted to have one engine counter rotate relative to the other engine so that they would cancel the torque reactions from the engine to the chassis. So basically it would allow the Streamliner to shoot straight and not try to twist the chassis as we're going down the salt. So to not have the chassis twist, you have to then take out the right angle gear change done on axle center. So everything that you see out there, including like the Speed Demon the way it is now, they have what's called a ring gear and pinion to do the right angle change on the axis. And that's not where you want to do the right angle change, because you have the most torque there. So if you have the most torque on the right angle gear set, you're going to torque the vehicle. And so they put weight jackers and all kinds of things in the vehicle to try to stop the vehicle from basically torquing up. But really the problem is the gear set that it's in there. So you have to throw that concept out, and that's what we've done. It's similar to what we did in the Formula One cars and in Indy cars, where we have a spur gear final and we did the bevel gear right angle change coming right off of the engine. Now we're not able to do that with this transaxle because we have the transmission in the middle, because we needed it narrow. But still, when we got to the final drive sections, there's still plenty of torque to be handled through the differential area. So you really want to make sure that you take care of that, and that's what we've done. And we'll turn it around and we'll show you in a minute. Some of you might be wondering what these are. These are basically two eye hooks so that we can use a engine hoist and hoist the transaxle up and drop it into the vehicle. It's designed to come in through the top of the frame of the vehicle, and then once it drops down into the vehicle, then we have to install the axles. So this cover's sitting right here, and there's an identical one on the backside over here. You take this cover off and the whole spool comes out. And what we have is we have our axles going inside, and our CV joints are inside in the middle of the spool, so that we can have the longest axles possible, because the tires are sitting right here. I mean, they're really, really close to the transaxle, so it doesn't give us much room to have a decent axle length if I had a joint sitting out here like people always do. So once the transaxle has been dropped into the frame, then you push in the axle to go to the other side with the joint, and then you put the next axle in with the cover, and then you bolt the cover on, and then you put the rest of the axle together on the end, and then you put your wheel on. Normally we don't show people our drawings, we call them turn shrouds, but anyway, behind the transaxle here is a full-scale drawing of the transaxle. To start with, I'll just show you these big circles right here, this one here and this one here. Those represent the two tires from the right side of the vehicle. This would be the output of our transaxle. So this is the bell housing I was talking about earlier with the coupler. I don't have the starter drawn in there. And then it drives through the input shaft here. This is the lower stack of gears, and this is the upper stack of gears. We have the odd gears back here and the even gears back here. Once we make the shift up here, then the drive goes right up here. And then through this gear set, it drives a shaft this way, a shaft that way, into a bevel gear here, into another bevel gear here. And then from that bevel gear, it drives a gear on this side, it drives a gear on this side. And then those two gears then drive these gears, and that's our final drive. And then the axle outputs are here. That's the basic layout of the 12-speed four-wheel drive Weismann transaxle. Up top we have the shift rail coming from the cockpit way over there. So we have the steering box and the rack right there for the rear. And then we have the steering box and the rack for the front. This view right here is basically the front view looking back through. So you can imagine right here, you actually can see the bell housing. And originally I had the starter here, but I've moved the starter to the other side. And so you can see the ring gear here. And effectively what you're seeing is sections through the transmission as it goes all the way down. And I can see lots of things in here. I'm sure you guys just see a bunch of lines, but for example, here's the gear pump that I have, which is sitting at the back of the trans. And then, well, it's all in here, but there's a bevel gear set here, the final drive gear set here, the joints here, the axles come out here, the whole spool sits right in there. I have the shift laid out here. I got the forks here. So I have everything developed on these two views for the most part that give me everything I need. There is also a top view of the transmission, but I didn't print that up. It isn't necessary for the assembly of the transaxle. The only other thing I haven't mentioned, I believe, is the basic center distance from this wheel to that wheel is 34 inches. We started at 40 inches, and then when we crunched it down to 34 inches, then that really forced me into dropping the quick shift transmission and going with the dog shifted transmission that I have in there right now. So we spun it around a little bit so you can have a look at the back side of it. Again, the missing cover here is to hold the steering, and we don't have that here. That's in New Zealand already. This lower cover here has the two pumps on here for the dry sump system we have. So you can imagine as the vehicle is going that way down the salt, the oil is going to be coming back here, and we have two pickups in the back. And like all transaxles that we do and everything else that we do, we dry sump everything. So we have two pumps on here, basically one for the rear transmission and the other one for the front transmission. And so the oil is going to go out through some coolers, and then it'll come back, and then when they come back in, they join in the middle. So I got oil coming from both sides to make sure that I oil everything. So we oil the bearings, we oil all the gear section, and the oil drops to the bottom, and it basically, the gears are not swimming in any oil, so we improve the efficiency of the transmission. Through this back here, you can see we have the spur gears for the final drive. There's the spool underneath, and then this is the bevel set to do the right angle change from the engine rotation, which is north-south, to the wheels, which is east-west. A couple people asked me this already, and I just explained it. All these little orange marks here are just basically paint marks to tell us, one, we've tightened this bolt, but two, after we run the vehicle, if we come back and look at it, we can see right away if the bolt is loose, then those paint stripes won't match up anymore. I don't know if I said this yet, but this vehicle is to try to break 500 miles an hour. And so we have geared it to go about 560, 555 was the number that was being floated around. We don't know how fast we are going to be able to go. There's so many unknowns with this whole program. But we decided to gear it faster than 500 miles an hour because, well, if you gear it to go 500 miles an hour, you know you're going to go 499 or something like that and not make it. So I wanted to make sure that we went well past 500, and if we managed to get going that fast, of course. The V8 engine is supposed to put out around 2,700 horsepower. Being that we're going to be in Bolivia, which is about 14,000 feet up, that's going to prove to be a little bit difficult to make some power up there because of the lack of oxygen. So Reg has a four-wheel drive dyno that we are going to be bringing up to Bolivia so that we can actually dyno the engine on the salt, get it working, and then once it's working, then we start making passes down the salt. So yeah, this is our first video. We've decided to make a video because we don't know if we're ever going to see this again. And I don't want to see somebody talking about this 20 years from now and explaining things that they don't even know what they're talking about. We're a little tired of seeing that right now on YouTube, so we've decided that we would do a little video. Hope you guys like it, and yeah, look forward to making more videos. Thank you for watching.